Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Yep, c'est moi. How you doing? Welcome to the program. It is the 15th of March, and the sun is out. Yeehaw. Again, I begin today's show with the same warning of possible interruption by a doorbell ring, by a FedEx person trying to make a drop here. They never showed up yesterday after I was anxious about it. Well, they say they're coming today at the same time, which means, I guess, never. I don't know. So, anyway, I've been up since 4 a.m. obviously, and I don't know. I haven't hit a wall yet. I've just I don't know. Isn't that? I hate that when you wake up and it's like, whoa, I'm awake. I mean, I'm truly awake. Wouldn't even try to get back to sleep. So happy to see that University of Pittsburgh Panthers are squeaked into the March Madness and will play on Friday afternoon. Pitt played Mississippi State, and I learned from, of all sources, what was it, Reuters, I believe, that the game that they won last night, they won by 1 point. Every time I had checked in on it, it was about one point differential. It was a very exciting game, which I did not see. But Reuters said that this back and forth game featured 21 lead changes, which is the most in the NCAA tournament in 5 years. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a hell of a game. Just saying. Oh, dare I, listen, I ain't talking about banking. I refuse. Anyone who's listened to me for any time knows that my understanding of things economic is appalling. I mean, I don't even understand. I don't understand basic things. Like if somebody gave me a book, Banking for Dummies, I probably wouldn't be able to follow it. I'm not kidding you. It's just there's a part of my brain, and it has to do with things economic, numbers, banking, insurance, stuff like that I just don't comprehend. I don't get it. I don't get that this is something we've all agreed upon, and that this is what I don't get it. I'm not kidding. And I know there's something wrong in my head, but I see that the Europeans are freaking out. Their markets are all down today, and all because I can't talk about it because I don't understand. But I do know it almost always is about men again. Behaving recklessly or negligently or incompetently or whatever, and then the rest of us end up losing money. They don't. I don't understand it. I don't want to talk about it. God help us all. So I was watching my favorite show last night, and I'm sure you're sick of me babbling about it. It's Henry Louis Gates' Finding Your Roots. I'm a very judgmental television watcher, so I'm always screaming at he's a well, never mind. What I love about the program is that in digging into his guests' histories, their ancestral histories, he ends up teaching us history. And it occurs to me, actually it always has occurred to me, that history, when told in that, sort of expansive way that so often it is taught, about wars and territory and men behaving badly, that doesn't engage you, doesn't engage me. What engages us is the story from the bottom. What the forces that were playing out historically meant to people, not friggin' kings and queens and leaders and men behaving badly and occasional women behaving badly, but people that we can relate to, humans. People who, in the show are people who are ancestors, right? So it personalizes history. It makes it alive. It makes it real. It doesn't make it about dates and these huge movements. And just in last night's program, I learned, I was startled to hear that America, my grandfather, who was a relatively recent immigrant to the country, ended up in World War I. And last night, I can't remember who's, I guess it was the actress Jane Lynch they were doing. Her grandfather ended up also in the same way, come over from Ireland and bango, World War One breaks out, and he's got to go fight for a country he's not even a citizen of yet. And what startled me was where he was deployed, because I had no idea. He was deployed to Siberia. What? I don't know about you, but when I think First World War, I'm thinking trenches, and I'm thinking France, right? France, Germany, trenches, Europe, right there. I sure as hell ain't thinking Siberia. And as usual, America came in belatedly. And my understanding was all our guys went, to France. Well, my grandfather did. So, Siberia? Did you know that? What the hell were our doughboys doing in Siberia? I'm sure this poor Irish guy, Jane Lynch's grandfather, was wondering the same thing. Wait a minute, I just came on steerage to the U.S. to get away from the horrors of Ireland, and now I'm in friggin' Siberia? Well, it was 1917, 1918. What was going on in Russia? You had a civil war between the commies and, I don't know, the White Russians. And I didn't know, but apparently, I guess, and I haven't bothered to look into it, but I guess the U.S. was concerned and certainly didn't want the commies. We came in on the side of the Tsar, I guess. Anyway, what were our troops doing? What were they supposed to do? Take on the Russian? I mean, we didn't deploy a lot of them there. So anyway, I'm just telling you that. I love this show because you learn. And the thing about history too, the other guest was this comedian Jim Gaffigan. He too, hailing his ancestors from Ireland. And by the way, speaking of that, and with a shout out to one of our audience members, Ray, who calls every once in a while, writes every once in a while, and doesn't agree with me on quite a bit of things, but he's the one who, anytime I say anything about the British monarchy, he goes berserk. There is no way to hear about what made the Irish leave their homes and come to the United States. There's no way to learn that story and not be appalled. I mean, horrified by the British. There's so many Anglophiles in this country, and I mean the British. What they did in Ireland is I mean, it's like war crime upon war crime upon war crime against. I mean, inhumanity, unbelievable. Have they ever even apologized? Oh, no. I'm telling you, I mean, that really. Jeez, God. And then the poor Irish, they're starving, they're dying. They come here and bump into what? The horror of America and its prejudice and racism and inhumanity. It's anti-Catholicism. It's anti-immigrant. And so when you hear the story of like what happens to people in 1830, okay? 1830, a poor Irish guy goes and finds a little spot in frigging like Maine, I think it was, way up in, he just wanted to have a chance to make things, work. And unfortunately, there was a bunch of Americans at the time called the Know Nothings. What a perfect name. Can you imagine a group actually, did they call themselves that? Were they proud of their ignorance? The Know Nothings. They're sort of the MAGA crowd. There's the same people, same crap. And they hated Catholics, they hated Jews, they hated blacks, they hated everybody but, themselves. And his poor guy comes from Ireland to the Maine, minding his own business, and ends up running for his life, escaping, essentially a refugee again from the horror that men perpetrate with their vileness and ignorance. And, they took off again. He ran to Iowa, which was like the Wild West, makes it to Iowa and prospered in Iowa. But hearing stories about America and what it was doing to people who had come here for refuge. And the year is 1830, or it's 1870, or it's 1910. It doesn't matter. It's the same story. It plays out over and over and over again. And it occurred to me, it is a story that the likes of Ron DeSantis doesn't want told. Because we don't look good. Sort of like when you look at the British and the Irish, we don't look good. And we also look like we haven't learned much. amazing to me when you think of DeSantis and his ilk. Their fear that people will know the truth. And they fear that if people know the truth, they will not be, I guess, patriotic. They won't follow orders. They won't pledge allegiance. But then what is the alternative? Their alternative is to either keep people ignorant of their own history, thus not allowing any national coming to terms with and growing from, but instead to peddle mythologies and lies so that we'll all feel good. I mean, how can you feel good? That's cheating. I mean, if you feel good because you're believing something that in fact is a whitewashed bunch of claptrap, how is that real? Are you really feeling good? I see. You have to enter a state of absolute delusion, and then these guys, DeSantis, Trump, and the MAGA crowd, will make you feel really proud, really good. Unbelievable. Came upon a quote by Winston Churchill, another Brit, who did some terrible, terrible, terrible things, but who did a few okay things too. People are complicated. But he said this. I'm going to do the quote because he's so right in this quotation. The story of the human race, excuse me, is war. Except for brief and precarious interludes, there has never been peace in the world. And before history began, murderous strife was universal and unending. So this is true. The story of human beings on this planet is a story of war and men behaving badly. And the way to really, I'll say it again, the way to really be able to understand it in any way, understand what it did, what it was like to live in this time or that time, is to focus on a life. One person buffeted and battered by events around them. The mega picture, everything gets lost. Everything just loses all power. So that's why I like that show, Finding Your Roots, as I used to say before I was informed that was the incorrect pronunciation. Roots. Oh, God. Okay. Where am I here? You know, the more I read about DeSantis, the less I'm afraid of him. I hope I'm not being stupid here. But, you know, we know what he's doing there in Florida. We hear little things he says. We see these sort of performance pieces he does, you know, shipping poor, desperate immigrants, putting them in buses and, you know, or airplanes and sending them off to some blue state to make a point. Because, I mean, what's wrong with using terrified, desperate men, women, and children for a publicity stunt? Huh? Nothing. But the more I read about him, the more he seems like really not ready, and I think I have a call. Let me get the call before I get into this. Hello.
Good morning, Lynn.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I, too, love Finding Your Roots. It's one of my favorite shows on television. I find very little on regular TV to watch. And apparently last night was a repeat, which I had never seen. And what was so heartbreaking to me and actually made me physically sick, a couple of years ago, this is pre-pandemic, a bunch of girls, we went on a house tour that they have at Christmas on the north side, not Mexican War Street, but the other area. And it just broke my heart. One of the big mansions, they gave the history of the two young girls that came from Ireland. They were sisters. They were 14 and 16. They came to this country and they were hired by this very wealthy couple. They cooked, they were babysitters, laundress, they did everything, but they weren't permitted in certain rooms of the home, and they slept on the third floor without any heat.
Heat, right. Yeah.
And we were such babies because it was freezing cold, and we're walking around bundled up going, oh, we're so cold, we're so cold. And when I heard that, I thought, my God, my daughter at that. Can you imagine the bravery? And yesterday, last night, that just brought it all back to me. And it just is gut-wrenching when you think the women, these young women that had how did they do what they did?
Well, you know what? I don't think they had much choice. Because life had dealt them a hand where they could stay in Ireland and know what their fate would be, which was not pretty. And the show last night told you that for girls, for everybody but the firstborn boy, none of them would have any money, would be marriageable, would have a doubt. In order to have any chance, they had to go into this great void and hope it turned out okay.
My background is Eastern European. And, you know, when you think about it, there was really no ethnic background that wasn't touched by all of this when our relatives came over. I mean, my grandfather, they were considered vermin. That's how they were referred to.
That's right.
And it's just gut-wrenching. It really and truly is. But the photos of all those young girls, and I just love that show, and it's on hiatus. So I hope that he comes back. It's so educational. It is.
It is.
It's unlike the history that we were never taught, really.
Exactly. Yeah, I look forward to it as well. So, well, let's hope it keeps on going. Whatever. Somebody else could step in if he decides not to. I'm sure that is a very popular show for PBS.
I'm sure it is too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to my story, Lynn.
Well, of course. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye. Yeah. Jeez. The other thing, though. So her ancestors were characterized as vermin. Mine as well. No Irish need apply, no Jews or dogs, no Chinese, Italians, Catholics. It is very rare, excuse me, that any of our ancestors came here. And where'd that sentence start? It is very rare. Oh, maybe. Yeah, it is very rare that they were welcomed with open arms. They were welcomed in the same way we're welcoming desperate people now, with ignorance, fear, meanness. And the sad thing is that the people who now will not acknowledge what is happening now with immigration in this country and our response. If you are to tell them, this is what happened to your great-great-grandfather, or this is what happened to your great-grandfather, they were treated by the people already here like the caller said, vermin. And they were not. And they are not now either. And yet the descendants of the people that were treated badly upon their arrival and yet managed to make it, these people made it, and their grandchildren are, undisputed Americans and doing okay. And then they turn around and do the same thing, the dehumanization of the next influx. This is, again, I guess it's, the failure to know one's history. And maybe even knowing history doesn't change the way some people would respond. They'll come up with excuses. Well, this is different. This is different. My family followed the rules. Never mind that there really weren't any when many of our ancestors came. It was pretty much, come on, just don't be bringing in some typhoid or something. No, there weren't the kind of hoops and limits that have been put on since. Anyway, don't get me going, because there is no doubt that what has made this country exceptional is that it is a nation of immigrants. And to turn our back on that is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing in its stupidity. We are a nation of mongrels, mutts. And anybody who knows dogs knows that the mongrels and the mutts are the strongest, the longest lived. They ain't inbred. And our country has benefited so much from that kind of diversity. And the idiots among us who don't get it could be the death of us. I'm not going to. Let me do this first. I had mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, yesterday, because I hadn't done a show the day before. Or maybe last week. Oh, who cares? These things are not important, Cullen. Just get to the damn point. God. You know how people can't tell a story? Do you have people in your life that, like, my God, they tell you every friggin' detail that bears no, I mean, it is unnecessary. You know, your eyes glaze over. They can't, you just, this just, oh my God. I used to wonder, I know, this is what happens when I wake up at 4. So I used to wonder when I would be in my car, let's say, or even walking, and everyone I see is on their phone, and they're yapping. And I always was thinking, what the hell is everybody, who are they, what is there to talk about all the time like that? Now, this is funny because you think, well, hey, Cullen, you're, no, but as soon as the show's done, I don't talk. I don't. I'm one of the quietest people you'd ever want to know. I mean, just don't talk. I'll talk if I have something to say and if I have a story to share. But I guess all those people that I see talking are like doing this thing that people do, which is boring the hell out of somebody on the other end. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. I'm digressing all over the place, aren't I? I think it was last week. It doesn't matter when it was. Excuse me. I'm screaming at myself. I mentioned that Mike Pence, actually, it was yesterday. Cullen, shut up. That Mike Pence at the Gridiron Dinner had made this disgusting, homophobic, nasty joke about Pete Buttigieg going on maternity leave. And I mentioned it because it was all over social media. People screaming and yelling at each other about it, fighting, all manner of, the way we engage. And so I brought it up too. And then I happened upon my favorite writer, Tom Nichols, writes for The Atlantic. And he was covering the Gridiron Dinner. And he had, this is why I like him, a different take on things. He talked about the fact that, everyone was all aghast and agog about what he had said about Pete Buttigieg. And what Nichols pointed out is in that same speech, Pence had said some other things that were, to his mind, extremely important and, in fact, belong in the historical record, because in that same speech, and the media, this is everything you need to know about media. In that same speech, and he quotes Pence. You might have seen a little of this. He talked about January 6th and said Donald Trump was wrong. I had no right to overturn the election, and his reckless words endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol that day, and I know that history will hold Donald Trump accountable. Now, that did get a little bit of play, but what followed didn't. I didn't see it anywhere, but Tom Nichols tells what he said after that. And it's more, the thing is, he doubled down. He said what happened that day was a disgrace. and it mocks decency to portray it in any other way. For as long as I live, I will never, ever diminish the injuries sustained, the lives lost, or the heroism of law enforcement on that tragic day. Okay, so there is a candidate for the nomination of the Republican Party saying something that no other candidate for the nomination of the Republican Party would dare to say. And the media don't even focus on that. They focus on a joke about maternity leave, because the culture wars are so much better fodder for attracting eyeballs. And Nichols says, so what does our media say the story is here? That Pence tried out a dumb gag line aimed at Buttigieg? The joke was stupid, it was disrespectful, but perhaps we might want to zero in on the more important point. Pence told us something horrifying this weekend about the condition of our democracy. That there was an attempt to overturn it. Nichols says the underreaction to his comments, however, is a warning that we have all become too complacent about the danger the Republican Party now represents. And believe me, he goes on to rake Pence for understandably. And the scary part is that the dangers of the Republican Party are real. The clear and present danger faced by our democracy didn't end on January 6th. It continues. And the fear is that way, way, way too many Americans don't yet get the degree to which the Republican Party has been taken over by extremists. Call them what you want. I call them neo-fascists, fine. Call them whatever you want. But they are not anybody you want running this country. Here's somebody, a historian who knows his stuff. The Republican Party is overrun with grievance politics. And they have married their grievance politics to an authoritarian movement and cult of personality around Donald Trump. It does no longer function as a normal political party. The fact that our media continue to treat it as if it is should frighten you. The Republican Party has no consistent ideology or set of policies. None. And even those who want to dislodge the leader, cult leader, Trump, are afraid to take him on in any direct confrontation. I'll just add one more thing from Nichols to put into perspective how numb we've become. Let's do a thought experiment. Imagine, for example, if Hubert Humphrey, after the riots that broke out at the 68 Democratic National Convention, said later, Lyndon Johnson encouraged those anti-war protesters and put me and hundreds of other people in danger. History will hold President Johnson accountable. Those two sentences would have shaken the foundations of American democracy and changed history. But today, we just moved on to another, whatever the latest outrage is. And in fact, we settled on the fact that Pence should apologize. That's what the White House did. The White House's statement was he should apologize for what he said about Buttigieg. One more thing. Voters are tired. The national media are committed to treating the GOP as a mainstream party. Trump and his coterie are counting on this exhaustion to return to power. But so are people like Ron DeSantis, who is usurping Trump's themes of bigotry, grievance, cultural panic to harness that same authoritarian energy for his own purposes. Republican leaders clearly have no intention of speaking truth or even decency to their base. Was ever a word more appropriate? The Republican base. And until someone in the party of Lincoln, he's turning in his grave, is able to muster even the tiniest fraction of courage, we will indulge our complacency about these Republicans at our peril. I also want to note that Tom Nichols was a Republican. And some of the fiercest people screaming the loudest now about the danger are people who were Republicans, who know Republicanism, who've seen what's happened to their party. They're the voices to listen to. I have a caller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. I guess I don't pay enough attention to the news. I don't recall the whole Buttigieg thing with Pence's speech. I remember more from what he said about Trump. And maybe because I pick and choose more what I'm going to listen to. I didn't know it was that big of a deal. The other thing you just mentioned. I mean,
well, it was the homophobia. It was a mockery. It was. Oh yeah, that's the White House even came out and said something about it. Yeah, that's where everybody went because that's the easiest place for us to be. With the it's not inconsequential, but the less consequential. Anything to avoid the reality of the situation, the very delicate situation this country is in, with only one semi-functional political party. That's the Democrats.
I guess, the way I get my news feed on my phone, because that's the only way you can get any news anymore, is a lot of little things that they'll start out and you try to get you interested, and a lot of it is just like, boy, Jimmy Kimmel got Trump on this one, or so and so really told off Kellyanne Conway, and that's not consequential to me. So I just ignore all that stuff. So maybe that's why I'm telling this story.
No, maybe that's why, Roger, you are not emblematic of the average American, okay?
Okay.
You're not.
I just I just feel like...
I mean, good for you. Good for you for seeing... Yeah, okay. Well, most people get distracted by the... by what is meant to distract them. We're addicted. We're addicted to being outraged.
Okay,
I am. I mean, we're all addicted to it.
Aren't you exhausted by letting yourself be addicted to being outraged?
Of course.
Ignore it. Well, you can't because you have to do this show. But anyway, I have a question. I don't know if you know the answer to, or maybe Ray, if he's listening. What is his thing about Great Britain so much? I mean, they're terrible, but
what they did to
their
Ireland.
History. Yeah,
their colonization of the Irish, and the Irish were treated under British rule, Irish Catholics, under British rule, like vermin, subhuman.
I get that. But is it just because he is Irish?
That's enough.
Because we could say the same thing. You could go just as deep on Spain and France and what they've done to the Americas and to Africa and their atrocities. I mean, it's just like, it's again, I try not to, I mean, I think we need to know our history, but like maintain this hate is maybe because I've never been a victim, I guess. I don't know in that regard. I mean, was Ray directly affected, or is he just hearing stories from his? I
have no idea, but that's his That's his heritage. I was married to an Irish Catholic who so loathed the Brits he couldn't see straight, and I know, was giving money to the IRA, Irish Republican Army.
Well, I just think, in this day and age, I mean, or even just 50 years ago, it's kind of ridiculous that people hold on to these things, because especially when the Irish Protestants and Catholics were blowing each other up, does anybody look at history and think about why are we Catholics or why are we Protestant? And it's like, well, you're Catholics because the Romans came and invaded and put a knife to your throat and said, be Catholic or die. And then the Protestants in that area of the world are Protestants because Henry VIII wanted to get divorced. And it's just like, I just find the whole aspect just ridiculous. And if people use their brains and say, okay, it's just like,
well, look, there's many ways to look at history. I mean, and yes, you could do it like Mel Brooks on the history of the world. And you can do it like it's a big joke. It's a big joke. But a lot of people die. A lot of people died. And, if it's your people, you said if it's your people, you feel that. You feel that. And stories do come down from generation to generation. Maybe that's it. But I don't know.
But so your ex-husband and Ray would strongly understand all the strife going on in the Middle East now between, with the Jews and the Palestinians and this, that, and then they can understand why they should hate each other for the next 500 years too, right? Or 1,000 years, or however you want to put it. It's just, at some point you got to use your brain, put emotion off to the side for a minute, and what do we want to get accomplished here, and how much do I enjoy being hateful? And because I don't think it does anybody any good.
All right, Mr. Kumbaya, you're done.
And by the way, I'm 94%. Hey. I have a DNA test. I'm 94% from the British Isles, and the rest of it is from Western France and Western Germany. And that's
sure.
Boring. I'm the whitest white man in the world. You know.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I've got so much original sin on my soul.
Yeah, you do. You damn well do. It's in your blood, I'm telling you. All right, I appreciate what you're saying. So thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye. Oh, gosh. We have another caller, so come on in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to break it to the previous caller, but he's not the whitest white man ever. Because there's no such thing as a white man or a black man.
There you go.
You can't. And that's why I called, because he's wondering, how can these people possibly, over 1,000 years, it all has to do with how you identify. They're not Catholics. They're not Protestants. They are identifying as such. They're just humans identifying as things. Once those
are tribes. They're tribes.
They're tribes.
You yourself you're a strange individual in that you're not tribal. Most are. I mean, but the vast majority of us, and I'll include myself, are.
Yeah. And then they want to always try to figure out what's going on. Why can't people get along? And it's very easy. Leave your tribe. It's very easy. If everybody, I was having a conversation with a friend about cultural appropriation. And I said, no culture can appropriate another culture because they're all just human cultures. It doesn't matter. They're all just human cultures. But as soon as you add that identity to it, then there becomes a problem. If you just think of them as human cultures, because people say, "What do you identify as?" I said, "Everything or nothing, whatever."
But Clarence, it is so basic. I don't know what gene you're missing, because I stop and think. In every way, nations are tribes. They have flags, so there's colors, and people fly their flag, and even on a much smaller level, remember the gangs had colors. You don't want to be wearing that color in that neighborhood. It is the same
sports teams.
Stuff.
It's all the same stuff.
Same thing. Sports teams are the same thing. That's true. That's absolutely true.
Everything is. I always make jokes about being from Canonsburg. Somebody will ask me, "Where you from?" And they'll go, "Washington." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'll do stuff like that. Just to point out how silly it is. About identifying and even being proud of something that is just a construct. If they're all constructs, to me, it's very simple. Once you realize that everything that, even like the idea of a tree is a construct. A tree isn't sitting there thinking, "Hey, I'm a tree. I think I'll create some oxygen and grow some leaves today." It's a construct. It's like I said. That's everything is. And once you realize, just even human beings is a construct. Yeah, I know. But
listen, you don't get too far off here. But I have to tell you, the reality is that by the vast majority of people would be terrifyingly untethered if they did what you're suggesting.
All they're doing is untethering themselves from that one identity and then tethering themselves to the bigger, the human race. That's all. You're not floating around, untethered. You're not really tethered. You're untethered from the human race once you do that. Or some analogy.
Well, other than, I don't know. If maybe you want to just put, some LSD in the water, and maybe that'll get it done for you. But
well, it's starting to become, more. Put some mushrooms. Start eat mushrooms and stuff, and you start
and become one with the universe. That's it really takes a kick in the head like that to get it. But boy, are you barking up the wrong construct called a tree. I got to tell you.
That was the funniest thing you've ever said. That was funny. That's a good callback. That was hilarious. I love callbacks. You called back to my tree. Pathetic tree.
Yeah, I did. Good to hear your laugh, Clarence. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Oh, gosh. There was an obituary in the local paper today that just blew me away because I never heard of this guy. And his obit was fascinating. He was an immigrant. From the Democratic Republic of Congo. And his name was Damien Puono. His picture here, he looks to me, when I first saw his picture, I thought, oh my God, he looks like the Reverend Martin Luther King. He has the same wide set eyes, the same broad. I mean, just anyway. But this guy who died too young, he's 11 years younger than I, and he ended up in Pittsburgh from Congo, where he was born, raised, schooled. He was accepted for a fellowship to the University of Pittsburgh, where he got his master's and his PhD in ethnomusicology. Wow. And he was betrothed to his wife, who survives him, in 1984 in Congo, but married right over around the corner at Sacred Heart in Pittsburgh. And they raised their 2 sons here. And all I know is reading this obit that, my God, the Rockefeller and Ford Foundations, he was appointed as Secretary General of the International Music Council of UNESCO in Paris. His contributions to the Institute for Cultural Enterprise, the New York African Film Festival, the Oman Opera House, and the African Union's Cultural Observatory were well recognized as innovative, pioneering, and his final legacy project, assisting the Congolese government with the construction of a state-of-the-art regional cultural center based in Kinshasa, a testament to his passion for the education of young people. And he lived his life here. And he will be, I believe, buried here. I don't know. That seems like a wow. There's an immigrant. There's an immigrant, and we are richer for his having chosen to be here. Just saying. And finally, to end this program, a rant. I paid my Allegheny County real estate tax yesterday. And as instructed, I wrote out a check, which pisses me off every year. And I've said this before. If I'm sending my money to the county, that check should be made out to Allegheny County. But in this corrupted county, the check is made out to the person who happens to be the treasurer at the time, which is bullshit. I'm not making this check. I don't want John Weinstein to have that money. But this shows a political calculation. If every year, every person in the county's got to write his name on a check, well, isn't it surprising to know that he is now the front runner for Allegheny County executive? And I will talk about this at a later date, not too much later, maybe tomorrow. But he is not the guy who should win. And you can decide who the guy is to win, but it's not him. It's who the corrupt old boys want. And a few surprising people want. I'll get into it later. But he is not somebody to lead this county into a progressive future. He's used to power. He wants power. And he has spent a lifetime solidifying power because every time I have to write his frigging name when I should be writing Allegheny County, it makes me nuts. And I do want to say this. The form that you fill out and then you keep has this on it. And it just blows me away. Because, I mean, this would be on his watch, too. The form says, if your tax bill mailing address needs revised, please call 412-311. Do you friggin' believe that? Pittsburghese on an official document. If your tax bill mailing address needs revised, I have to tell you, that is incorrect grammatically. It is so incorrect. It needs to be revised. Please call. And it's a peculiarity of Pittsburgh, but on an official document, Mr. Weinstein, it should have to be or not to be. As I said after moving here, my God, if Shakespeare were a Pittsburgher, we never would have that incredible soliloquy in Hamlet. It would just be or not. Or not. That is the question. All right, you guys, that's it for me. Thank God the doorbell didn't ring. I'll sit here and wait for Fed XXX. And I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.